Mr. President?
The Senator from North Dakota.
Mr. President, I ask consent the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, in China, as I speak, there is a man in a small prison cell lit by one single light bulb. He is imprisoned for 11 years in the country of China. And on Friday of this week, in Oslo, Norway, he will be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. His name is Liu Xiaobo, and his wife has written me asking me to come to the Nobel Peace Prize presentation in Oslo, Norway this Friday in honor of her husband. I'm not able to go to Oslo this Friday. The Senate, I should say, is going to be in session the rest of the week. And I regret I can't be in Oslo for the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize. But I did want to take a moment to remember what is happening this week. This is Liu Xiaobo. He's in prison in China, imprisoned for 11 years. That's his sentence. And I want to describe why the Chinese have put Liu Xiaobo in prison. It's not the first time he's been in prison, as a matter of fact. Let me tell you just a little about Liu Xiaobo. He was born in 1955, grew up in an industrial city in China's northeast. As a young man, he wanted to study literature, so he went to Beijing, and he became a PhD in comparative literature, became a professor, and dedicated his days to teaching and to writing. By 1989, he'd had the good fortune to be allowed to travel abroad as a visiting scholar, and he was at Columbia University here in New York, in the USA, when the demonstrations began to grow in Tiananmen Square. He cut short his visit to Columbia University as a visiting scholar and returned home to China, joining students in Tiananmen Square in a hunger strike. Then on the night of June 4th, a scholar whom the students had grown to trust persuaded a group of students to withdraw from the square and to save their lives. That was Liu Xiaobo. Authorities in China labeled him as subversive, sentenced him to 18 months in prison. 18 months later, upon his release, he was told he could neither teach nor publish. He described his plight then in these words. He said, quote, "Simply for expressing divergent political views and taking part in a peaceful and democratic movement, a teacher lost his podium. A writer lost the right to publish. An intellectual has lost the chance to speak publicly." On his release in 1991, he continued to write, and again he was placed under house arrest in 1995, then sent to a labor camp where he was detained until 1999. In December of 2008, Liu Xiaobo called for political reform and was a supporter of something called Charter 08 in China. He was once again detained, then formally arrested, and then sent to prison for 11 years. Now let me describe what Charter 08 calls for. A group of people in China who want the expression of freedoms that are available to all of us had created Charter 08. It calls for the guarantee of human rights, an independent judiciary, the freedom to assemble, the freedom of expression, the freedom of religion, protection of private property, and on. So someone who advocates this and pushes for these kinds of reforms is now sitting in a small prison cell with a single light bulb. On Friday, in Oslo, Norway, when they award the Nobel Peace Prize, there will be one empty chair on the stage. That's the man to whom the Nobel Peace Prize is being awarded. There will be empty chairs in the audience because his wife is not allowed to go. She's detained under house arrest in China. And I want to describe that as well. Liu Jia has been barred from traveling to Oslo to accept the honor. All of Lu's family has been barred from traveling. Now, the Nobel Committee will postpone bestowing the actual medal, but the ceremony will go on Friday. There have now been 100 documented incidents, just over 100 documented incidents since October, in which Chinese citizens have been harassed, interrogated, and subjected to police surveillance, detained, or placed under house arrest for their expressions of support for Liu Xiaobo. Some supporters reportedly have just disappeared. The travel restrictions are pretty unbelievable. Violinist Lin Chang, an American of Chinese descent, who teaches at the Boston Conservatory and who will be playing at the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony on December 10th, expressed concern about the possible personal and professional repercussions his family might have in China for his accepting the invitation to play at the ceremony. About 140 Chinese activists invited by Liu's wife to attend the ceremony. Only one at this point has been able to say, "I'll be there." More than a dozen and far more have been blocked from flying overseas since Liu won the Peace Prize in October. This is a photograph of Liu Xiaobo and his wife, both courageous citizens who, in my judgment, are owed our respect and all that we can do to say to the Chinese government, you cannot possibly continue to do this, and then insist that you believe in democracy. Mr. President, Premier Wen Jiabao, the Premier of China, said this in a recent CNN interview. He said, quote, "Freedom of speech is indispensable. The people's wishes for and the needs for democracy and freedom are irresistible." So says Premier Wen Jiabao of China. I hope that he will know and that Chinese officials will understand you can't talk about these principles in that way and then continue to imprison someone like Liu Xiaobo, who the rest of the world will celebrate as a courageous man striving for greater human rights in China, for the very things we take for granted every morning that we wake up here in the United States. This man is spending 11 years in prison just for writing about his aspiration for himself and the rest of the people in China to have those freedoms. So what I wanted to do today is to say I will not be in Oslo on Friday. I am enormously honored by Liu Xiaobo's wife asking me to be present. I chair the Congressional Executive Commission on China. We've held many, many hearings on the issues that exist between our country and China. And I just held a hearing within the last month about the issue of Liu Xiaobo, the Nobel Peace Prize, and what it means when a government says, rather than be at a place of honor and our country celebrating your winning the Nobel Peace Prize, we will have you in a prison cell once again. That is not what we would expect or anybody should expect from the government of China. I've said previously that there are things that have improved in China in recent years for some Chinese. China is a big country. It's going to be a significant part of our future. We're not quite sure how that's going to manifest itself, but our country has decided affirmatively that our relationship with China ought to be a constructive relationship in which you have constructive engagement through trade and travel. Constructive engagement through trade and travel is anticipated to move China towards greater human rights. And in fact, there have been some areas of progress. But this is a disgrace. This is a disgrace. Liu Xiaobo is a hero. He ought not be a prisoner. Liu Xiaobo will be honored whether the Chinese like it or not. He will be honored this Friday in Oslo, Norway. And the fact is, The Chinese are trying to do everything they can to keep people away from that ceremony. They have been calling other embassies in Oslo saying, do not go to that ceremony. I think it's pretty unbelievable what has been happening. And I hope that all of the American people understand that there is someone that we ought to think about this Friday who's exhibited great courage in support of freedom for the people of the country in which he lives, and that's Liu Xiaobo. On Friday, he'll still be in prison, but the world can still celebrate his courage and say to the Chinese, in every way we know, you cannot continue to talk about freedom and then keep a Nobel Peace Prize winner in a dark prison cell in the farther reaches of China. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.